welcome, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. We've been off for a couple of weeks, thanks to last week being the Super Bowl, and I hope your team won. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Welcome. A little bit about myself. I am a public relations and marketing professional that happens to have a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight we're going to have the opportunity to talk with three dynamic candidates all running here in the state of North Carolina. North Carolina is certainly the state to watch. Each candidate is running in a very competitive race. We are currently in the primaries here in North Carolina. Early voting has started. I am really excited about that. Our candidates are too, and they're going to talk about their reasons for running and whatnot. I want to tell you something very special about North Carolina. We know for a fact that we are being watched very carefully because President Biden and other members of his administration have traveled to North Carolina, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, and the First Lady. They've been here at least 4 or 5 times since January. North Carolina has a very hot business climate. We've got Apple is in preparation now to build its one and only East Coast campus in the Raleigh-Durham area. North Carolina truly is a purple state. And we were holding the line, we meaning Democrats, were holding the line in charge of state government with our Democratic governor until we had one Democrat defect to the other side, giving the Republicans a supermajority and rendering our governor's veto power ineffective. Okay, so that's just a really quick smash up of what's happening in North Carolina state government. But I want to bring in my very first guest. Up first, we have Sophia Chicklick.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes. Sophia is a candidate for the North Carolina District 22 Senate seat. She is giving incumbent Mike Woodard a run for his money. Sophia's career began on the Obama campaign. She was a field organizer during the primaries and general election. She went on to serve in the White House and in the Department of Labor as one of the youngest presidential appointees in the Obama administration. Sophia is a proud member of the North Carolina Network of maternal health care funders for birth equity and justice. Welcome, Sophia, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Next up, I have District Attorney. Okay, Satana, we don't have your camera. Okay, there she is. Next, we have current District Attorney for the city of Durham, Satana DeBerry. She's on the road. Literally. She is running for North Carolina Attorney General. She is known here in Durham as a progressive DA. She's looking at each individual case that comes before her as unique. She is a Princeton and Duke University graduate. She has served as a defense attorney and general counsel to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, and the executive director of, I have this memorized, the executive director of the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Welcome back to the show, District Attorney Satana.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you on the road coming from Greenville. And last but certainly not least, we have Stephen Valentine. He is running for Durham County can't even talk. Durham County Board of Commissioners. Stephen is a social worker, a military veteran, a decorated combat veteran with service in Iraq, an attorney, a professor, having taught at both North Carolina Central Universities, School of Social Work, and School of Law. He is a former presidential management fellow with the U.S. Department of State of the Political Military Bureau. He currently serves as director and supervising attorney of the Veterans Law Clinic at North Carolina Central University School of Law. Welcome back to the show, Steve. And my phone is ringing. Everything is going on.
It's a pleasure to be back on Politics and Culture with you, Pam.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Loretta. Hello, good evening. Good evening. Okay, so let's get started with this conversation. All right, Sophia, I'm going to start with you first. I'm going to briefly tell us the key points of your platform and why you are running for North Carolina State Senator.
First, I'll start with the why, if that's okay. You know, I'm really running to make North Carolina the best state in the country for working families. I have a 2-year-old and I'm concerned about his future, right? I want him to have the same things that all parents want our kids to have. I want him to have a great experience in pre-K, an excellent public education, opportunity, democratic rights, bodily autonomy. And I think that those things are under attack in our state. And I believe we need new energy and new ideas to fight the Republican supermajority in Raleigh. And I believe that here in Durham, we're this bastion of real democratic values. We're a deep, deep blue area, and we need a reliable Democrat in that seat. And we don't have that in this moment. And so I'm really running on a platform of care that centers working families and our needs. So caring for our children, caring for our communities, and caring for our caregivers. Post-COVID and well before that, our caregivers are not okay. And we're all caregivers. Grandparents, taking care of neighbors, we're taking care of kids, we're taking care of parents. A lot of the folks in the care industry are taking care of all of us. But we're not taking care of them. So taking care of our caregivers is all about defending our reproductive rights. It's about stabilizing the childcare industry. It's about making sure that we have a real living wage. It's about centering the needs of working parents in particular. Caring for our children is about high quality public education, healthy kids, making sure that we have workforce development. It's something I'm deeply passionate about. I worked at the Department of Labor. I want to make sure that all of our kids, college track or otherwise, are able to graduate with high paying quality jobs and that there's equal access to those opportunities. And caring for our communities is about affordable housing. It's about transforming our criminal legal system. It's about protecting our environment. It's about making sure that work actually works for us, and that it's possible to be a parent and to do something else well. Right now, it is too hard to do both. And so many people in our community are struggling. And I believe we need strong advocacy. We need coalition building. And that's what I've spent my career doing. And that's why I want to run for the seat.
Okay. So like I said, Sophia is running against an incumbent, a fellow Democrat, and she is really on the case. And I met her initially at a Shabbat service at Judea Reform. And then I met her again at St. Joseph's last Sunday and invited her to the show. And I'm so glad you were able to come on, Sophia. Okay. So DA Satana, same question. What are some of the key points about your campaign? What are your key messages? What are you running on?
Thanks, Pam. And I hope there's not too much background noise. As she said, I'm on the road out here with everybody in North Carolina. And that's really why I'm running, because we need an attorney general who cares about the people of North Carolina. And for me, my top issues, like every Democrat in this race, is going to tell you their top issues are reproductive rights and voting rights. But the truth is, I'm the only one who's actually shown that she cares about those things. I'm the only district attorney in North Carolina who has promised never to prosecute a pregnant person nor their healthcare provider for making a choice that is their choice to make. I have been on a regional task force for working on political violence. So when you go to vote in this early voting period, and on March 5th and on November 5th, and nothing happens, that means we have done our job. That means we have worked through the issues around voter security and voter suppression that have been threatened in North Carolina.
Yes.
I have 30 years of public experience. I have literally already done everything that the Attorney General does. I've been an environmental lawyer. I have protected consumers against scammers and debt collectors and sham student loan organizations. I have represented ratepayers at the Public Utilities Commission, and now I've been the two-term elected district attorney in Durham County, where we have really worked to change the culture of criminal justice, not just to focus on the most serious and violent crime, which we have done, but also to do really innovative things like of 12,000 of our neighbors by working with our nonprofit partners to forgive $2.7 million in court fines and fees. I am the district attorney that Josh Stein and Roy Cooper's #1 criminal justice issue was the testing of sexual assault kits. I'm the DA that tested mine first, and I have prosecuted twice as many of those cold cases as anyone else has.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Very
And
good.
and so I have shown the political courage necessary. And finally, really, I'm just a little black girl from Hamlet, North Carolina, who's able to use her public education to succeed. And I don't know that that's possible in North Carolina because the way that we have really restricted the rights of North Carolinians. And so I think the people of North Carolina deserve a qualified lawyer who's willing to go out there and litigate some of these rights and make sure we don't lose them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And so, Stephen, running for the Durham County commissioner's race in Durham, it is very crowded. Got 10 candidates for 5 slots. I'm down for all of the incumbents. There was one that retired. Yes. And I hope that you get my goal is that you get the retirees spot. What are some of the key points for your platform?
Well, thank you for the question, Pam. Before I address the question, I just want to make a public service announcement. And so you have 2 great guests on here this evening. Sophia Chitlick, who's running for state senate, and I'm supporting her 100%. And so to the extent that that's an endorsement, you have it. And so all right. If you're supporting Valentine, I want you to support Sophia Chitlick. And as we move into a more progressive America, we have one of the leading progressives headed to justice. And her name is Santana DeBerry. And to the extent that this is an endorsement and you're supporting Valentine, I want you to support Santana DeBerry as well.
All right.
So Pam, I've had an ongoing discussion with many of our residents here in Durham County. As you know, I presently serve on the Planning Commission. And so it's through that conversation that a larger conversation has occurred across the county. And people have told me repeatedly that even during periods of growth, and we are in a period of growth and prosperity here in Durham County, there's too many of our residents who are being left behind. And so that was one of the key reasons that I decided to get into this race. And I had the backing of my family and friends and neighbors encouraging me. And so at that point, it became a decision to answer the call to service. Now, with respect to the things that I intend on accomplishing as one of the next Durham County commissioners, I want to join Sophia Chitlick in that fight for early childhood education. I believe, quite frankly, that the future of childhood education is universal pre-K. And we seem to be headed in that direction, and I want to join in on that fight. I also want to play a pivotal role in the funding of Durham Public Schools. I have 3 beautiful children who are all adults who have gone to Durham Public Schools. And quite frankly, I think that will be one of the first issues that the new commission will have to face with respect to the long-term financial health of Durham Public Schools. And so I'm ready to join that fight as well. I'm also running for safe streets and safe schools across the county. And so what that looks like is being creative, not being punitive in our attempts to make our streets safer and our schools safer, but working with community leaders as partners to ensure that our children are where they need to be at nighttime, and also giving them some additional resources in the community to have some recreational outlets. And so I'm looking to work in that area as well. Also, I would like to see that social services get in the hands of the most vulnerable among us. And finally, jobs, and jobs at a living wage. And so here in Durham County, it's becoming quite expensive. And so a lot of our employees who work in county government live other places. And so we have to do a better job to make sure that those who work here can live here. And so I'm ready to go to work for Durham County.
Okay. So there's a recurring theme among all of you, one about education and certainly one about housing and jobs. Now, I'm going to say this. I can't even get, I get so verklempt about this whole thing with this housing, is that it's so expensive. I never forget, I am directionally challenged, you guys. So I'm like this Daisy. I go the same way every time when I go places, except for this one day I ran into a detour and I said, oh, that's Gear Street. I know Gear Street. I know how to get home from there because I live in Northern Durham. I turned on Gear Street and there were these two houses at that time that were those tall houses, real modern. And I was like, what happened? And then I could peer inside of one of the garages and there was a Porsche in one of them. Now, I know that neighborhood doesn't have Porsche income, yet this house had a Porsche, and this house definitely is driving up the taxes of everybody else that are in grandmama and them's house, right? So the other thing I've learned too, okay, so we've got all these people coming in from California and elsewhere into our area. I understand why North Carolina is a beautiful place. But the other problem is that you've got corporations that are buying up these homes and then they're re-renting them out at unbelievable prices and stuff. Is there some kind of way to stop this so that we don't end up having the problems that they have in San Francisco and places like that, where high tech came in, high incomes, and regular people are priced out? And regular people are our essential workers, our teachers, our social workers, our police, our fire, and whatnot. Who wants to tackle that one first? Sophia?
There's a lot there. There's a lot there. And there are barriers that we have at a state level to affordable housing. So right now, our down payment assistance essentially only goes to rural areas. We don't have inclusionary zoning at a state level, so it limits what folks at the county commission or the city council level can do. And our state is punitive about that. We've got right now housing, our building code has been held up in terms of its modernity. So we have structural challenges happening at a state level that I would like to tackle. But I also think there are some areas where we can work together. Workforce housing is one of those areas. We need to build housing for our teachers and our first responders so that they can afford to live in the communities that they serve. We know that that's going to produce better outcomes for our citizens. So I'm inspired by the Lowe's Grove project that Stephen can probably tell you a little bit more about, and other examples of that. And we need to use our Affordable Housing Trust Fund to be able to do some of that and to be able to do that better. Not just in Durham, but across the state. So I think that that's one thing. I believe that we need to give our communities more control and not less control. So if elected, it's my job on the state level to eliminate some of those barriers that are holding back the good work that our commission and our city council really wants to do to tackle affordable housing. But it's a deeper and systemic issue. We never even fully repealed HB2, which puts limitations. It's not just the bathroom bill, it puts limitations on cities and municipalities being able to control an actual living wage. So even if we have consensus about the things that matter on a state level, policy is holding us back from the progress that Durham deserves. So I see it as my job to go in and work collaboratively to end some of those barriers and deliver results for Durham so Durham can do its thing and be great and put forward the progressive policies that we want and that we have.
How do you go about that legally, Satana? How would you being going to the chief officer, legal how would we, is that strictly something in the state legislature, or can the attorney general's office help with some of that type of thing? What needs to be done to stop, to kind of curtail all of these corporations purchasing housing and whatnot until we can get the other situation figured out?
Yeah, Attorney Valentine and I probably could do a little legal clinic on all of the issues that you have brought up, and just talking about that, and that Sophia's brought up. You know, one of the big problems with North Carolina is North Carolina's a Dillon Rule state. And that just simply means that local municipalities only have the power which is granted to them by the state. So when we talk about things like inclusionary zoning, about workforce housing, about planning and how we'd like to do our communities, we are always in jeopardy of having our General Assembly say, no thank you, and nixing them. Right? And so that is, I think, something that needs to be revisited. You know, as the Attorney General, I'm not a policymaker. Now, if you had me as Attorney General, you would also have a Attorney General who has a very deep knowledge of housing policy and housing law.
That's right.
And the things that can be done to change that. And, you know, it's not just us that are turning into San Francisco. There's a housing issue in all 100 counties in North Carolina. This is no longer a triangle, triad, Charlotte issue.
Oh, is we're having this problem in other counties as well?
All 100 counties have this problem.
Now, I wasn't aware of that in the rural counties. I'm thinking like in Rockingham and...
No, ma'am. Anywhere you go, the rent is outpacing income. And forget about home ownership. And we're not just talking about affordable housing. We're talking about safe and decent housing. Some large number, like in rural communities, 70% of homes were built before 1970.
Right, exactly.
So that means those places may not even be safe and decent for human habitability anymore. I was built before 1970. I'm barely safe for human habitability, right? So I think there is a role for the Attorney General to play in that. Certainly, I think there's a role as we review kind of where we are statutorily, where we want to get to. I also think, though, this should not be a partisan issue.
Absolutely not. I mean, because a decent place to live is a human right, just like healthcare and other things. These are human needs. You got to have shelter. You have to be able to afford food. You need to eat. You know, these are just the basics. So it should be a nonpartisan issue. It absolutely should be. Stephen, you have any thoughts as a county commissioner? Because, you know, I know the school system will tend to lean very heavily on the county commissioners. And then you'll get people like myself that say, look, I can't tolerate any more taxes. So what's going on? You know, it's really a conundrum. to
Oh
say
wow!
the
So
least.
you just opened up another hornet's nest talking about taxes, Pam.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't want, I mean, I really, the situation we have with the wage issue in the school system is just abominable. And that comes from the state. I mean, that is just all of the state workers. I mean, really, 1%? Really? 2% wages? And inflation is eating up every little bit that you get. So I don't understand how we do that. And certainly for our kids, I don't mean to be beating a dead horse, but I was doing a little research, and one of the concerns about North Carolina is our less than par public education, lack of mass transit, and natural disasters that we have with hurricanes.
Wow. So thank you again for a very complex question, Pam. But before I delve in, let me just say thank you to one of your guests who was so kind in recognizing my service to our country. So thank you, Mr. Reed, for such kind words.
Yeah.
So let me say something briefly about taxes before I talk about the affordable housing. And so we're not far off from a reevaluation of the properties here in Durham County. And so with the housing market being the way that it is going to be quite a shock to our residents, particularly our older residents. And so we're going to have to be paying attention very soon on what that's going to look like in our community, because it is going to be quite a shock. And I think we need to start telling people that, increases of 25, maybe even 30% are likely based on the property values. And nobody wants to talk about that, Pam, but I'm not afraid. As a matter of fact, someone said you shouldn't go around saying things like that because you won't get reelected. Well, quite frankly, I believe in term limits. And so I think everyone should go to the House at some point. How that looks like, we certainly could talk about that, but I don't think that we should have career politicians that spend 30 years in office. That doesn't sound very democratic to me. And so I think I disturbed you by telling you what's coming.
Well, see, here's my other problem.
Well, I'm saying that just based on the prices now.
But you almost sound like the insurance commissioner who came up with some. You see that report he was talking about for housing? Some kind of big. It was some huge increase, and I know it was double digits. He was
40%.
Yeah.
I'm not paying 40%. Listen, Pam will be down there protesting somewhere because that's just going too. That is too much money.
Hey, Brother Valentine don't want to pay it either.
Yeah.
So I'll be fighting, but I mean, I'm just paying attention to the tea leaves, if I can use that as a sort of an example. And I see that's something that we're going to have to seriously take a look at as we go towards a reevaluation period here in Durham County. So more directly to the question of affordable housing, I think the larger question, Pam, is accessibility. And so my good friend Sophie pointed out that the project going on in Lowe's Grove, and then there's also some projects on Main Street that are designated for affordable housing. But affordable for who?
Yeah, I was going to.
So these are market-driven projects, right? And so what that says to me behind sort of what's being presented, and so and what's being presented is what we have to work with. But a large number of the people who live in these communities won't be able to return to the community, right? They won't be able to return to the community based on units that are based on market forces. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And to the extent that there are units that people could potentially get into, they still have the barrier of accessibility to actually getting it. And so the city has monies that is available for low income residents to help defer some of those costs, but they have problems meeting the eligibility requirements even for that. And so during COVID, I would, from time to time, get in my car and drive around Durham. And I tell you, developers were busy during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Communities around North Carolina Central University changed drastically during COVID. And so now we're in a position where the prices of those homes in that area have been driven up so high. You can see large numbers of long-term residents putting for sale signs up to try to get out, because they just can't do it anymore. They can't do it anymore with the rising costs of their taxes. So I think the larger issue really is one of accessibility. And to be honest, Pam, it used to be in our country that we had a commitment to public housing. And I think we need to refashion that commitment in the 21st century. And I'll be talking to my good friend Sophie and her colleagues to look towards some federal monies to make that happen here in Durham County. We need to really refashion that and bring it into the 21st century, because that's really where the commitment lies in solving this issue that we have with affordable housing. As Santana Dayberry said so poignantly, is a problem throughout the 100 counties here in North Carolina.
Yeah, and let me say really quickly, I don't even know that we should be even using the term affordable housing anymore.
Right. I agree.
That is, that has historically been a term that has applied to folks who were making about, less than 80% of area median income.
Right.
People we thought about kind of as the working poor.
Yes.
Now we are really talking about just people who are working.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? It's just people who have good jobs, people who have college degrees, people who are doing everything that we have asked them to do.
Right.
And they still cannot afford. Look, I am the parent of young adults.
Mm-hmm.
I have a child who is a senior at the North Carolina Central University. Right, been in Durham long enough to know how to say it. Right, and she lives in my house and probably will continue to do so, because I don't know where she's going to go when she graduates. I don't know how it is going to be possible for this child who grew up in Durham to stay in Durham, which is what she wants to do. She loves it here. Right?
Yeah.
And she'll probably have a good job, and but she won't be able to. So we really have to look at our statutes, because this is a systemic issue.
Yes, it is. But how can we fix it, at least from one state at a time level? Because in a few minutes I'm gonna transition to talk about some national things. So what do you think, Sophia? How do we take bite sizes of this issue and try to work it out?
Well, I think the way that we make policy is reflective of our values. And we have to remember that the policies that got us here were choices, and we can make different choices. I think that's critical. So part of it is about
hold on 1 second. Satana.
There's a white bag that says Sarah.
Oh, she's on mute. She's on mute.
So, part of it is about, we actually have a surplus in this state. So, we can make choices to put that into our affordable housing trust fund, to use that money differently, to increase not just down payment assistance for new home buyers, but also assistance to help people stay in their homes as their neighborhoods change around them, which is what, Stephen was talking about. That's so critical. Or to help folks weatherize their home so that they can afford the energy bills, or improvements to their home. We need to make sure that the people who built Durham can stay here. It has to be the number one priority. And that's true across the state. So, I think part of it is we need, we have an understanding, right, that the corporations that are coming here, moving into our community, they're creating jobs, and that's great. But we are forecasting our corporate income tax to get to 0 by 2030.
No.
Back to the tax. That's a choice. That's a choice that our General Assembly has made. And so, not only are home prices being driven up in that context, but then we're not able to reinvest that money into housing, into our public schools. And we know we have a crisis when teachers in our community cannot afford to buy homes here with a good job and savings and a down payment and good credit. So, I think part of it is we need to invest in community-driven CDFIs, community development finance, organizations, and not just the self-helps, but new ones that are really coming from within the community. We need to invest in land trusts so communities can have control over their properties in their neighborhoods. We need to talk about what does affordability actually mean. We need to build more public housing. We need to do it. We need to learn our lessons from the past and do it in a way that's smart and inclusive and beautiful. And all of that is possible. We have to remember that these are choices we can make, but we need vision. And I think for so long, we've just decided that it's not something we can do. So we've stopped talking about what's possible.
And I think that Sophia, what you're talking about, we get comfortable and we stay in this rut with career politicians. And you don't get to do anything new. They don't necessarily think out of the box. It's just the same old, until you find out that certain votes went a certain way, because you kind of get comfortable with somebody and they just stay in place. And I have to admit that you kind of woke me up when I
thank you
next to you in church the other Sunday. So we're going to switch topics a little bit. It's not so much on North Carolina, but talking about the national scene, if you will, about election 2024 in general.
Pam, before we move on, can I just add one thing?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Because I got sort of I don't want to say it's sort of a new idea, but it would be creative in our area. So in terms of adding to the revenue to lessen the burden of working men and women in our community, I think I'm going to be asking Duke University to consider some of the options around helping us in this regard. And so I know that Duke University is a tax-exempt organization, but they have a lot of other networks that hide under the cloaks of the university. And so I don't think it's far-fetched for us to start a discussion like in other municipalities, like around the University of Pennsylvania and around Yale University, where they've had these conversations with these large corporations, educational institutions that make a lot of money.
That's right.
So I'm not going to be afraid to say, hey, we need to sit down and talk about how Duke can help defray some of the costs associated with Durham Public Schools.
Right.
And so I just wanted to point that out. I think that's a conversation that we need to start.
Right. I read something somewhere where there were about Duke not paying taxes, and that in some locations where Duke was located, that they were paying taxes, but what I saw was very vague. It didn't give the details, and I thought, well, everybody, why should the little guy pay the brunt of everything? I'm just so tired of that. That is really old.
And quite frankly, Pam, if you started the conversation, people are like, oh no, Duke's not going to want to do that. Duke, I believe, would be a good corporate steward in this regard. I don't think that anyone has approached them on this subject. Maybe they have. I don't think they have. But it's definitely something that we can consider. I mean, I don't think we have anything to lose by starting that conversation. What's the worst they could say? No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, but what's the best we can say? We can come up with legislation that requires it, right? We can do that.
Well,
I don't know if you could do that.
I'm not so certain.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
Do that.
But I think Stephen's got a good point. There are large universities. My own alma mater is undergraduate alma mater is doing exactly that. Is making payment in lieu of taxes to the municipality in which they sit to support public services. I mean, they benefit from those public services just like the citizens of that community. They are citizens in that community. You know,
That's right.
Duke is our neighbor.
They're our
We
largest
work
employer.
there. We
Yeah.
send our, you know, we are members. You know, that is a part of our community. It is not a wholly separate place. So
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I think it brings into light this larger question of corporations in our politics and big institutions in our politics, and where we can set the table and really find common ground, and where we need to be more wary of that influence. You know, there's a lot of corporate PAC money coming into my race in particular, and you know, I think that constituents often have a different interest than, for example, developers or health insurance providers. And I think we really need to be mindful of the way that our politicians ally with corporate interests, because, you know, we're all being elected to fight for the rights of our constituents first. And I know that all the folks, certainly on this call, that's exactly what they're going to do, right? But it's not the default setting in our politics anymore.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so flipping the script a little bit, why is this election so consequential? I mean, there's just so, let me count the ways, but why is it so consequential? I mean, 2024 is a reckoning, and for those of us who love democracy, we've got to fight for it. So, who wants to go first with that to answer that question?
I'll go first.
Okay. Okay.
And you know, I'm going to go first because, you know, I hear a lot of people say democracy is at stake, and that is not an understatement. But I think that is not what's going to move people. I think what we have to tell people is, you know, voting is important every time you do it. Right?
Yes.
We're not just voting for one guy against another guy. And Sophia and I know very well that it's usually one guy versus another guy, right? It is, you are voting for the community in which you want to live. You are, for lack of a better term, voting for the beloved community, right? And your values and what you want to live. And I think what is really true this time is that there are people who are actively working against the beloved community.
Yes.
There are people who are being very clear to us
Very
that for some of us, they feel like our rights have gone too far and they're ready to roll them back. This was fun while it lasted, but they're not going to keep doing it.
Right.
And in my race in particular, we have seen what happens when you have a Republican attorney general. You have a Republican attorney general, women suffer.
Yes.
Women die.
Yes.
Trans people suffer. Trans people die. Children suffer. Children die. People of color suffer. And people of color die. It is a death cult.
Yes.
You have a Republican attorney general. In Texas, they are prosecuting women for miscarrying. They are subpoenaing the health records of children.
Can you believe that? I mean, what country are we in? That's insane.
That's right. They are floating barbed wire in water. It doesn't matter how you feel about immigration.
Right.
You shouldn't want people dead.
Right.
And so that's what is at stake. And really what's at stake for North Carolinians is we've got to bring out voters we've got to have people that people want to vote for, not just somebody to vote against.
Right.
And, you know, people want to, you know, Sophia's speaking my language when she's talking about the money in politics and how people think just because you got money, that's going to mean you win. But there are a lot of people who just won't show up because the people with the money don't talk about their stuff. They don't really talk about stuff that means something to them.
Right.
And well, at least what we're trying to do in this campaign is get people motivated to come out to vote because they have someone to vote for, not just somebody to vote against. They
Right.
have a beloved, they have somebody who is talking about a community in which their rights matter, somebody who shows up in their community, and that's what they want to come out for. So I'm going to jump off my soapbox and let everybody just get on theirs.
That soapbox. Stephen, you want to go?
So I think it would probably be more appropriate that my state colleague there running for Senate, since we heard from our federal candidate, I think probably be appropriate to hear from her next.
Okay. In other words, you're trying to think of your answer.
Oh, no, I'm ready to go.
I know he's going to have a lot of good ideas.
I'm ready to go.
I think about this question very much in the context of choice. Reproductive justice is on the ballot, and we really need to listen. Our safety, our actual safety in our lived bodies is on the ballot. And I think when we look at so many of these races, we look at the Republican ticket for attorney general or governor, we're really talking about people that we are saying some scary things, and we need to believe that they are telling us their plans ahead of time, and we need to act like we believe them. And we should, we're talking about contraception bans, full out abortion bans, no exceptions. I mean, that's what they're telling us that they want to do. They're telling us, like, District Attorney DeBerry said, that they're going to lock up women for having a miscarriage. That's absolutely what will happen here. We could be Texas if we elect some of these folks. We're talking about people who have vocalized bigotry, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia.
Yes.
These are not people who make North Carolinians more safe. However, also what you said is totally right. It's not just enough to vote against abhorrent views. We need to have things to vote for, which is why having a true vision and a true progressive agenda is so critical. And to really center the ideas that have vision. I just don't believe in the politics of the less bad. That's not our job here. It's not. So I think the more that we can talk about what we do stand for, that we are a party that is for working families, that centers that lived experience, that is here to make sure not just that you can choose when to give birth, but that when you do, we're going to help you take care of that baby. Not just at birth with a safe birth, right? Which we don't have, but also all throughout public education and into college. So we need to be talking about what Democrats do believe in, and we're not great at that yet. I mean, the folks on this call are great at that, but as a party, we need to get stronger with our message.
Yeah, I don't know what that's all about. I did a whole show on messaging. It was one of my most popular shows. And I don't know. It's interesting. And then when I fussed at somebody on the national level, on the Democratic Party about that, on Twitter, they didn't allow me to tag them anymore. They didn't unfollow me, but they didn't allow me to tag them anymore. Because I just get so frustrated with that. Stephen, you're up. You're up with that question. Why is this election so consequential?
So I've been going around sharing with the people that I get an opportunity to talk with that I believe that this is a consequential election. I believe Ms. Chitlick could probably attest to that. She heard me say it today. I actually believe it to be true. And so democracy is 100% on the ballot. If you hadn't been paying attention for the last 8 years, the last 4 years should have awakened you to the prospects of one person, one vote being in our rear view mirror, not window, our rear view mirror. And so just looking at the early numbers at the polls, I still have hope, but I was hoping that more people would be out voting for down the ballot. But I agree with both of the prior speakers that ultimately all politics is local. If I can quote the old politician Thomas Tip O'Neill, who said that all politics is local. And so it all comes back to, how things impact local communities. And so even though it may seem as though it's a federal issue, right? And so the abortion issue at the federal level has large implications for the women who live right here in Durham.
Yeah.
So when you look on the TV on NBC, MSNBC or CNN or Fox or whatever your viewing pleasures are, the realities is that those have real world consequences for women right here in Durham County. And so who we choose to make decisions on our behalf makes a difference. And so we've got to find a way to garner some sort of excitement around this race. I can't understand why there seems to be sort of lackluster excitement around the current races up and down the ballot. But this is a consequential election, and most elections are. Right?
Yes, they are.
Yes, most elections are.
But this one is like
our very future as a democratic republic is at stake.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes. So January 6th of a number of years didn't convince you that there's a segment of our society would be willing to do anything to take over our democracy, then you're not awake.
Right. You're not awake at all. Mm-hmm. Now this is maybe a little controversial question, but I got to ask it. And because I think about it often. What do you make of the criticism of President Biden is receiving about his age? And is he selfish to run again at age 81? Who wants to do that one first?
I'll take it.
Okay.
So I had mentioned that I thought that term limits were the way to go. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court of the United States has already determined that term limits are unconstitutional, particularly as it relates to federal elections. Mm-hmm. But to the extent that Joseph Biden is the Democratic Party's selection to be its nominee for the president of the United States, I think the stakes in this particular election are too high for us to be divided on this question. Mm-hmm. Would I like to have someone a little bit more exciting at the head of the ticket? Mm-hmm. Maybe. But I think our democracy is much more important than excitement at this level. And so if he's going to be the torchbearer, I'm going to rally around him. And quite frankly, presidents don't do it alone.
No.
They have many people around the office of the presidency that makes that particular person who occupies that position successful. And so I'm hoping that those who are in and around the White House and up and down the ballot will sort of put their differences to the side and coalesce around Joe Biden's candidacy so that we can ensure that democracy will be here for our children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who wants to take it next?
I think, I think that is a red herring. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, they are the same age.
Yeah, they are the peers. It's two grandpas against one another.
So, the American government is gerontocracy. Mm-hmm. It's not just the president, it's Congress. So, that it is what it is, but it's certainly not the issue that I'm going to make my decision around. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. I will tell you, I initially thought there was a time before Biden, before he officially stated he was going to run, and Gavin Newsom went to meet him in the White House. And I thought, in my mind, in my imagination, I was thinking, well, maybe they're, going to chop it up a little bit, and maybe Biden was going to give him his blessing to go ahead and run or whatever. Because what I personally think, and we know this to be true, that the White House ages you. Biden is in great physical condition. Is he older? Yes, he's older, but he's mentally alert. When he's frustrated or angry, he does have a stutter, and it comes out, right? And so he's human. He's human. So, and people are saying those little digs because of that. But then but I think like the red herring is that Kamala, they don't want her to be in charge if something were to happen to him while in office. That's it.
Pam, let me say this too.
Uh-huh.
I think there is also a little bit of, we're here talking politics. That's the thing that we like. We're into it. I think a little bit of this is the horse race aspect of it. Is like people who like talking politics find smaller and smaller and smaller different things to differentiate candidates on. And those are not the things that Americans really care about.
Yeah.
And we spend time worried about how old Biden is, or who's got enough money, or this, that, and the other. And there are literally people going, who are losing access to health care, who are driving an hour, 2 hours to get primary care. I learned this weekend that there are only 2 gynecologic oncologists between the Tennessee border and Charlotte. And do you know that the only cancer in the United States for which survival rates have gotten worse in the last 20 years is uterine cancer? That's a reproductive justice issue.
Yeah. Yes.
And they want us to be distracted.
Yeah.
When Joe Biden was born.
Yeah.
I don't care. What I care is about all the women who can't get to gynecologists because they're leaving, because they're total abortion and contraception bans.
Right.
And they're having to go to their primary care, and they're not picking up the cancer. That's what we should be caring about. That's thousands of people.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. And even with Medicaid expansion in North Carolina, yay, I'm so happy about it. One of the problems, the flip side of it, is that already the wait to see a specialist is next to impossible. My girlfriend husband has cancer, and she said, and he's also a veteran, and she said that it just takes so long to see somebody, and they don't have time to wait to see somebody. And so, even though we got Medicaid expansion, the flip side of that is that everybody's excited that they've got it, but once they get it, can they get to the doctor to see somebody?
If they get to the doctor, is the doctor going to take it? I mean, look, Stephen is a veteran. Stephen, you've heard the horror stories of people driving 3 hours to Durham to go to the VA and dying in the parking lot.
Oh my God.
Don't even make it in the building.
Oh my God.
And this is not anecdotal. Oh. This is what is really happening to us in North Carolina.
Yeah. And if it's happening here, it's happening in other states as well. No doubt. Because there's nothing really that different, except for some states are even more extreme, whatever. So
I was just going to say, I want to highlight that some of these things are policy choices. Again, we have a massive shortage of OBGYNs and of midwives and of birth workers of all kind in our state, in urban areas and rural areas everywhere. And that's a policy choice. Every single surrounding state and 36 states in our country have certified professional midwives who can practice legally. They can't practice legally here. That's based in a history of sexism and racism. That's a part of a legacy of our state. And it's part of a larger effort to control women's bodies. And so I think, we have to when we look at this, there are pieces, there are real policy choices that we've made that have gotten us to this moment. And that's really, that's like, District Attorney DeBerry said, I want to be talking about the real things that are affecting people here in our state. This presidential election is absolutely critical, but all of us are running for office because I assume that we share this belief that it starts with us, right? If we're going to talk about age, let's talk about the age of our state Senate. Half of those folks are over 60. And I have a lot of respect for our elders, and we need wisdom, but that's not representative of our population. So it's not representative of North Carolina. 2/3 of our state Senate are men. I love men, but that's not representative of our population, of our democracy. So we've made policy choices like the salary or making it a part-time job that make it structurally almost impossible for many, many people who are deeply qualified to even apply publicly, run for this job. And so those are the things that I want to be talking about.
Right. Whew, that's a lot. And one of our listeners said something. The Oxford, Michigan School Board election is very important this cycle. It's local, and the issue is transparency. I think the Oxford, Michigan, that's the case. Is that the case, Howie, where the parent got convicted for the kid shooting up the school? The right to sue can be crucial to reform and prevention of further trauma to the community. I think that's what she's referencing. Check out the organization Mothering Justice for more medical issues that affect women. Oh, Mothering Justice, there's an organization. I'm assuming that they're national, Shoei, right? They're national? Is it a national organization? Okay, because we've got people here. Well, tonight, everybody has some link to the state of Michigan because that's my home state. So, and they showed up tonight. But at any rate, you guys have any last thoughts that you want to give a round robin real quick? A last shout out to your campaign or something. And I want you to share the video so you can use it for your campaign or whatever. Anybody who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Okay, Stephen.
So my name is Steve Valentine, and I'm running for Durham County Commissioner. Early voting's already started, and I want you to vote and vote early. And if you're supporting Valentine, I want you to support Sophia Chitlick for State Senate here in North Carolina, in Durham. She'll be representing Durham County. And also, I'd like for you to vote for Satana DeBerry, who's going to be our next Attorney General here in the state of North Carolina. So vote and vote early.
Right. Well, and you know what? And don't let me forget before we get off to show you our Souls to the Polls for February 25th. Who's going next?
I'll be there. I'm going to Souls to the Polls, and I'll go next. So I'm Satana DeBerry. I'm the 2-term elected district attorney of Durham County. I am the most qualified person to ever run for Attorney General in North Carolina. I'm asking for your vote. As Attorney Valentine said, it is crucial that you show up. That you show up early, get that vote in, and bring somebody with you. Don't just come by yourself.
Right.
And follow me on the social media. Go to my website, www.satanadberryfornc.com. Follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. I am not on TikTok, sorry, but you can follow me on everything else. And please learn, this is an important race. You will never find a candidate better equipped to take on Dan Bishop in the fall than me.
All right, Sophia.
I'm Sophia Chitlick. I'm running for state senate here in District 22 in Durham. I'm asking for your vote. I have about 30 pages of policy on my website at sophiafornc.com. You can follow me at Sophia with a PH for NC, the word for, at all social platforms, including TikTok. Although I'm still learning how to use it perfectly, have to be honest. And yeah, there's so much at stake in this election. We need new energy. Durham deserves a true progressive and a strong Democrat. I want to be that for y'all.
All right. And so I've got one thing to show you guys. One thing that, that's the wrong thing. Let me see. Present. To share with you all, I want to share with you Hold on. This. Can you see it? Do you guys see a flyer?
We see it. I'll be there.
Okay, great. February 25th, next Sunday, Social Justice Sunday at St. Joseph AME Church in the city of Durham, North Carolina. It's our last Black History Month celebration with Reverend Dr. Benjamin Chavis Jr. And after the service, we will be doing Souls to the Polls. We will be getting in our cars and caravanning down the road to North Carolina Central University to vote early. And we have a number of organizations here that are also supporting this great effort. All right, I'm back. So anyways, guys, let's say goodnight. Thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate you. Satana, you did your thing in the car going home from Greenville.
Made it work.
Made it work. Okay, unmute yourself, Steve, so you can say goodbye to everyone.
Have a great night.